Good morning, class. We are looking at college algebra practice test chapter 2 equations and inequalities. And here's the first part. All right, answer the following. Find the distance between 2 points, -5, -6 and 4, 2. Also find the coordinates of the midpoint of the line segment that joins the two given points. So let's see what we have here, everybody. We have been given 2 points and we want to find this distance. So along the x-axis, we have x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Along the y-axis, we have the distance y sub 2 minus y sub 1. And we know if we call this ABC, according to Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And therefore, the distance following this topic becomes x sub 2 minus x sub 1 quantity squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 quantity squared under the radical. So 4 minus -5, that makes it 4 plus 5 quantity squared. 2 minus -6, that means 2 plus 6 quantity squared. Under the radical would be the distance between these two. So we have 4 and 5, 9 squared, 81, 2 and 6, 8 squared, 64, and they add up to 145. This is the exact answer, everybody. When you put it into a calculator with a bunch of decimals, it becomes an approximation. Now, to find the midpoint, you add up the x coordinates divided by 2, you add up the y coordinates divided by 2. That's how you find the midpoints. A quick justification, if you draw a line parallel to the x-axis here, draw two line segments parallel to the y-axis here, and remember, this is point C, point B, and this is the midpoint. D is in the middle of the two. So the two triangles, the small one and the large one, triangle ABC, the big one, and CDE, this small one, they are similar because all angles are equal. If you recall, similar figures, they have equal angles, corresponding angles are equal, corresponding sides are in proportion. So they are, this angle is in common, this angle is equal to this angle 90 degrees. These two angles are equal and therefore they are similar. So we can say CD from the small one to BC from the big one is the same as CE from the small one to AC from the big one. As we know, CD has a size half of BC. So we know this is half. And therefore, if you do the cross product, AC is 2C. So AC is 2 times CE, which makes CE and AE equal. And that's a proof. So basically add -5 and 4 divided by 2, -6 and 2 divided by 2. This gives us -1/2. This gives us -4 halves, which is -2. So The answer to part A is that, and the answer to part B is this. A man drove 10 miles directly east from his home. Made a left turn at an intersection and then traveled 5 miles north to his place of work. If a road was made directly from his home to his place of work, what would its distance be to the nearest tenth of a mile? So first and foremost, from home, we go 10 miles east. That means to the right, 5 miles north, up. It creates this shape with this distance being 10, or this side being 10 miles and this side being 5 miles. So what is this side? We cover Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The two legs are a and b. So 10 squared plus 5 squared equals c squared. So c squared is 125. C is the square root of 125. It's about 11.18034 miles. As far as the answer is concerned, you always answer exact unless they ask you for so many decimals and you fall. So that would be the distance. If so, how much shorter would the man's one-way trip be every day if we could go this way instead of this way? Well, we go 10 plus 5, we go 15 miles. But if we had to go this way, the difference between the sum of these two and this number is the exact answer again. But at this point, we want to answer it roughly. So this is 15, this is about 11, let's say 0.2. So we get about 3.8 miles, roughly. We want to solve this rational equation. To solve a rational equation, there are different ways. The fastest and easiest way is to multiply both sides by LCD of both sides. This one and this one are fine. This has to be factored. We want two numbers. The product is -3. The sum is -2, +1 and -3. And before we do that, please understand that x plus 1 equal to 0, x is -1. In this way, x equals 3. They can't have those solutions. So first, exclude the answers that you must. What do you exclude? From here, -1. From here, +3. And this has the same answer. Meaning at the end, if you happen to have a couple of solutions and one of them, let's say, is this, you exclude them. Now we're going to multiply both sides by x plus 1, x minus 3 as a common LCD. So we are going to multiply this by the first one. First, let me explain to you what happens here. For this case, x plus 1 drops, and you get 5 times x minus 3. 5 times x minus 3. For this case, x minus 3 drops, and you get plus 1 times x plus 1. 1 times x plus 1. And for the right side, everything drops, you get negative 6. So I hope you see how fast and easy you can come up with the answer with this methodology. Distribute 5x minus 15 plus x plus 1 equals negative 6. These two add up to 6x. These two, they add up to negative 14. They change to positive 14 on the right. We get 6x equals 8. Divide by 6. X is 8 over 6, or 4/3. Lines, slopes, and its interpretation. Slope is defined as rise over run. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1 is the rise. X sub 2 minus x sub 1 is the run. Rise over run, the average rate of change of y with respect to x. M is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. The notation used in calculus is delta y over delta x. Rise over the average rate of change of y with respect to x. As we look at these various lines, this is a horizontal line. A horizontal line has an equation y equals b. The slope of any horizontal line is 0. The y-intercept is 0b. So as you can see, this one, which this point has coordinates 5, 3. So that means this line has the equation y equals 3. And this point 0, 3. Vertical lines, x equals a, the slope m is undefined, x-intercept at a0. So when I look at this line, all I need is one pair, 2, 5. And this tells me the equation is x equals 2. And of course, that's the x-intercept 2, 0. Now, of course, this one has a positive slope, L1, L2 has a negative slope. Standard form of a line ax plus by equals c, that means x and y are on the same side. Slope intercept form, y equals mx plus b. If you solve for y, that's what you get. And point slope form of a line, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x of 1. Parallel lines, they have equal slopes, different y-intercepts. Perpendicular lines, slope of one is the negative reciprocal of the other, or their product is negative. So that's the synopsis of dealing with lines. And so for parts A and B, graph the following lines in a rectangular coordinate system and clearly show the intercept on the graph. So x equals -2 is a vertical line. So locate -2, 0, and then draw a line. It's that simple. Y equals 3. It's a horizontal line. Locate 0, 3 and draw a horizontal. Find the equation of a line containing 4, 0 and 4, 5. If either the x coordinates or the y coordinates are identical, you don't have to do anything. Notice in both cases, x are the same. So it has to be x equals 4, which makes it a vertical line. However, in part D, it is the y coordinate of the two pairs that are identical. So that means no matter what, the y coordinate doesn't change. So y must be -7, which makes it a horizontal line. Find the equation of a line in slope-intercept form that passes through the point -3, 10 and 5, -6. Find the intercepts and graph. Before we start, as far as the graphing, you can even use these 2 points. But intercepts will give you a more precise location and therefore a more precise graph, everybody. So with that being the case, the very first thing we do, we calculate the slope, which is rise over run, y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So -6 minus 10 over 5 minus -3. -16. 5 minus -3 is 8, results in -2. We're going to use this formula y minus y1 equals m times x minus x sub 1, and we use one of those pairs, it makes no difference. For example, if I use this one, I get y minus 10 equals m -2 x minus -3, which makes it +3. If I use this pair, just to show you, if I use this pair, I get y minus -6, which is +6, equals -2 x minus 5. Both of these equations, when you simplify and solve for y, they give you the same answer. So in this case, we have -2x minus 6. Remove the negative and make it positive on the other side. Y is -2x plus 4. Now, here's how you check, everybody. Since we use the first pair to come up with that, plug in the second pair. If it works, all is fine. So -2 times 5 is -10 plus 4 equals -6. It works. Now, I can plot the two pairs graph and I'm done. However, I want to find the intercepts. To find the intercepts, one of them is given 0, 4. The other one simply, if you set y equal to 0, x becomes 2. So those are the intercepts. 0, 4 is the y-intercept, 2, 0 is the x-intercept. You plot those two pairs, you graph them, and look at the line that contains 5, negative 6, as well as negative 3, 10. Find the equation of a line that is perpendicular to 3y equals x minus 4 and passes through the point negative 2 comma 1. Find the intercepts and graph. Remember, this part is just to make the line more precise. All right. So to find a line, either parallel or perpendicular makes no difference. First, you have to figure out what is the slope for this line, which means you are going to solve for y. Divide everything by 3. We get y equals 1/3 x minus 4/3, and therefore the slope for the given line is 1/3. The one we need is perpendicular to that. As you know, two lines are parallel, they have equal slopes. Perpendicular would be the negative reciprocal. So the reciprocal is 3 and make it negative. So M2 is negative 3. Again, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x of 1. And we are going to plug in the pair into this. So y minus 1 equals m, negative 3x minus negative 2 makes it x plus 2. So negative 3x minus 6, we move the negative 1, we add to it as positive 1. So the equation becomes y equals negative 3x minus 5, and clearly negative 5 is the y-intercept, more specifically 0, negative 5. What is the x-intercept? We have to let y equal to 0 and solve it. And so to do so, let's first go back to this one, and we are going to graph that. Therefore, we want to find the intercepts. To find the intercepts for this, when x is 0, find y. When y is 0 is find x. So this one has been found already, 0, negative 4/3. That's the same line, everybody. 0, negative 4/3 is the y-intercept. The x-intercept, if you set y equal to 0, 0 equals x minus 4, x becomes 4. So I hope you see how easy it is. X is 4, find y, y is 4, find x. And now plot the two pairs for 0. Negative 4/3 is negative 1 and 1/3. So between negative 1 and negative 2, and closer to negative 1. And that's the given line. The line we just came up with, as I mentioned, has the y-intercept 0, negative 5. If you set y equal to 0, x becomes minus 5/3. And you can plot those two pairs, 0 minus 5, and negative 5/3 is negative 1 and 2/3, so closer to negative 2, and connect the two. And of course, negative 2, 1 located it's on that line. This is the complete graph using intercepts, makes it look better. coordinates -2, 1. A retired woman has $50,000 to invest, but needs to make $6,000 a year from the interest to meet certain living expenses. One bond investment pays 15% annual interest. The rest of it she wants to put in a CD that pays 7%. If we let X be the amount the woman invests in the 15% bond, how much will she be able to invest in the CD? Set up and solve the equation for how much the woman should invest in each option to sustain $6,000 annual return. We need to make up a table. The investment, one of them is at 15%, the second one is at 7%. This is the total amount. Before we move on, one might say, okay, why not all of them at 15%? There are issues such as taxation and so forth. There are restrictions. The amount of interest follows I equals PRT, the principal times rate times T. The rate is here 15%, the rate here is 15%, 7%. The time, when we say annual, everybody, T equals 1. So we are going to put X amount here. And the total is 50,000. The amount of interest we need is 6,000. So we have a total of 50,000. The amount of interest needed is 6,000. And we're going to put X in this 15% return. The rest of the 50,000, that means 50,000 minus X. I've seen students making a mistake of writing X minus 50,000. All you have to do, add these two, you have to get the total. If you put X minus 50,000, that's not what you get. So I is P times R times T. So over here you have X times 15% times 1, so 0.15X. Over here we have 0.07 or 7% times 50,000 minus X times 1. And these two must add up to give us the total we need, $6,000. This table gives us this one. By the way, it's similar to other types of questions as long as we understand the amounts must add up. It's called a mixture problem with the total amount of investment or the total amount that we mix. The volume, total volume is the volume of investment, remains unchanged. So 0.15x, when you want to multiply these two numbers, I want to remind you how it's done. When you multiply these two, everybody, this one has 2 decimals. It has 4 decimals. Ignore the decimal and 0. 7 times 5 is 35. One decimal cancels out 1 0. Because we have more zeros, 4 minus 2, we have 2 extra zeros. If we had 2 extra decimals, we would go to the left. So 0.15x plus 3,500 minus 0.07x equals 6,000. We are going to combine these two. Into 0.08x. Subtract 3,500 from 6,000 to get 2,500. Divide by 0.08. Or you can see that you can change the denominator to 8 by moving the decimal 2 to the right. That means you add 2 zeros to the numerator. And you get $31,250. That's the X amount that is invested at a 15% return. The rest of it, 50,000 minus this amount, $18,750 is invested at a 7% bond. So that's a mixture problem. We really need to understand how this setup works. Anytime you have a similar question, set up this table. Flora starts riding her bike at 20 miles per hour. After a while, she slows down to 12 miles per hour and maintains that speed for the rest of the trip. The whole trip is 70 miles, and it takes her 4.5 hours. For what distance did she travel at 20 miles per hour? This is a class of problem known as motion problem. D equals RT. D is the distance, R is the average speed, and T is the time. So you set up a table like this. Rate times time is distance. And let's fill it up. So it starts riding her bike at 20 miles per hour. So the speed or rate to start with 20 miles per hour. After a while, she slows to 12 miles per hour. And maintains for the rest of the trip. The whole trip is 70 miles. So the total distance is 70 miles. And it takes the total of 4.5 hours. This is how you fill up the given. So you come up with the table, you put it. And now D equals RT. So how much time did we put in here? We don't know. How about X, Y, Z, T? Pick up a variable of your choice. And what about the time here, the rest of it? If the total trip takes 4.5 hours, this must be 4.5 minus T. Again, it's not T minus 4.5. This is the total. Be very careful. The sum of these two is 4.5. What is the distance covered here? 20 times T. What is the distance covered here? 12 times 4.5 minus T. And if you add these two, you're supposed to get 70. So to get to this equation, you have to go through this process. So distribute. This remains. This is 12 times 4, 48. Half of 12, 6. They add up to 54. This is minus 20. 20 and negative 12 is 8T. Subtract 54 from 70. Divide by 8. T becomes 2. Now, to make sure we have answered this, so this is everybody 2 hours, which means this is 2.5. Now, when we go back to the question, it says for what distance did she travel for 20 miles per hour? We haven't finished answering the question. Is the product of these two numbers 40 miles? First, solve the formula for W, P equals 2L plus 2W. Then use your result to find the width, W, of a rectangle whose length is 15 and whose perimeter is 15. So here's a rectangular shape with the width and a length. And the formula P is 2L plus 2W. Or, by the way, it's the same as 2 times L plus W. But anyways, we are solving for the width. So we are going to move the 2L and subtract it from P. We're going to divide both sides by 2. Now, before we move on, I want to make sure we understand this is done and it can't be simplified further, because I've seen sometimes students cross this, which is wrong. You could write this as P over 2 minus 2L over 2, which is P over 2 minus L. You can do that, okay? But you cannot drop the 2's from the bottom and top. And now to solve it, P is 58 and L is 15. This is 30. So the numerator, so the width is 28 over 2 or 14. If the units were given, we would return the answer with proper units. Perform the indicated operation and express the result as a simplified complex number. Recall, a complex number is in the form of a plus bi, where I is the square root of -1, and square root of negative n is I square root of n. So just to elaborate on that, making sure we understand. If you have square root of 4, the answer is 2. If you have square root of -4, the answer is 2i. If you have square root of, let's say, 25, the answer is 5. If you have the square root of -25, is 5i. This is what we mean by this part. So we are going to distribute -1 times -2 is +2, minus 3i, minus 4i, plus 6i squared first. And now to combine those, this is easy. Minus 7i. But what is I squared? Reminding you that I is by definition square root of -1. If you square it, becomes -1. Cube would be I squared times I. Okay, so -1 times I. And if you raise it to the power of 4, raise this 2 to the power of 2. I squared becomes I to the power of 4, -1 squared becomes 1. The importance of this is that we shouldn't have powers of I. We should know what they become. And if the power is 4 or divisible by 4, then it becomes 1. So these two, they add up to -7i. This positive 6i squared becomes -6. Okay. And they add up to 2. They give us -4 minus 7i. So what is the process if they ask you to simplify, divide, or put it in standard form? It means the same thing. So you have to multiply by the conjugate of the denominator. So 2 minus I, the conjugate is 2 plus I, So you're going to multiply and divide by. And because a plus bi times a minus bi is a squared plus b squared, we're going to use that. And the reason is that I want to show you, recall a plus b times a minus b is a squared minus b squared. So this is a squared minus b squared I squared, which becomes plus, right? Because minus I squared is plus 1. So you multiply. So this is just foiling. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times I is 3i. 4i times 2 is 8i. 4i times 4i squared. This one is 2 squared plus 1 squared according to this. Obviously, we can add this 2, and we're going to change this to -4. So we get these 2 to give us +2. These 2, 11i. 4 plus 1 is 5. And now, if you left it as that, it's fine. The reason I'm changing it to this format, because if somebody asks you right here, what is A, what is B, you may not know what the answer is. So we separate them as 2 over 5 plus 11 over 5 over I. So A is 2 over 5, B is 11 over 5. I just want to make sure that we know that. So what about square root of -9? According to this is 3I, and square root of -16 is 4I. This makes this 12i. So the result is 59. What about I to the power of -6? 1 over I to the power of 6. And again, I want to go back to this. And understand if I to the power of 4 is 1, then I to the power of 8 is 1, I to the power of 80 is 1, I to the power of 2000 is 1, because they are divisible by 4. And so you divide the number, in this case 6, by 4, you get 1 with the remainder 2. You just write the remainder 2, which means 1 over I to the power of the remainder, and you know this is -1, and that's your answer. To make sure we are okay with this, let me try a couple of things for you. How about this? This is 1,225. Divide by 4. We really are interested in the remainder. And by the way, a number is divisible by 4 if the last 2 digits is divisible by 4. For example, 24 is divisible by 4. So I hope you recognize that the 25 is not, and the remainder is 1. So it's I to the power of 1, or I. Okay, it's really simple. Here's another example. What if we have I to the power of 43? I'm going to divide 43 by 4. Again, this is not the only way. This is the fastest way. 40 is divisible, therefore the remainder is 3. So I to the power of 43 becomes the same as I cubed, which is -I. It's very straightforward, everybody.